Plush Faces Life that's brought to you today by Grape Nuts Flakes.
The apple bowl of the world is out on the Pacific coast, in the northwest corner of the United States. It lies in the Evergreen State, where bountiful nature has especially prepared the soil, is the Wenatchee Okanagan.
Portia Dawn Pace was born in Wenatchee, Washington on December 25, 1953. She was the second of three children to Barbara and Bernie Pace.
Pam is the oldest. I was born in 1953, and then Corky came along in 1954.
Barbara made history as East Wenatchee's first female bus driver, while Bernie worked as a personnel and safety director at Foot Mineral Company, overseeing pig iron production. During this time, Pam, Portia, and Corky began school, enjoying nature and neighborhood friends.
We would go to school, come home, do a chore or two, and do homework, and go out and play with the Hartman boys next door. And you knew it was time to come home when Mom rang the dinner bell. It was a brass clang, 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 clang. Could hear it all over the neighborhood. And if she rang the dinner bell and it wasn't dinner time, you knew there was some serious trouble going on. Mom, I can't remember this, but Mom tells me a story about how Pam and I were sitting out on the back porch with Corky when he was just barely able to talk, and we were saying, "Say fuck, just say fuck." I don't even know where we would have heard it. Probably Pam went to school and heard it. We went to the lake on the weekends. We would leave Wenatchee after Dad got off work on Fridays, and we would go to the Arctic Circle with our German Shepherd Storm in the back seat. And we'd stop at the Arctic Circle and get 5 hamburgers for $1. And I guess we ate in the back seat with the dog and drove to the lake for just a fantastic, back in the day, what's different about it, how it is now, we didn't have any store-bought anything. We didn't have, blow-up toys. We didn't have, it was all whatever you found to float on. Usually it was a big piece of driftwood that floated by. We'd think, well, we can hammer something on that and make a raft out of it. But there was no store-bought toys. And Penny's had a fire. Mom went to the J.C. Penney's fire sale and got Pam and I matching black swimsuits that had a white braid across here. And every time we jumped in the lake and got the swimming suits wet, we smelled like smoke. Forever. I don't think that smell ever went away. We learned to swim, water ski. We had the Brisbines had a cabin a couple miles away, and then Phil and Rosemarie had a cabin across the lake, and it was just wonderful family time. Growing up it was different because we always had Christmas Eve at my aunt and uncle's house that just lived down the hill, and I don't know how we got all those people into that little tiny house. We always came home on Sunday nights, and we were always wishing, gosh, I wish there was another bridge, because we had to go all the way around in those days. Now there's 2 bridges, so we get home a lot quicker, but not back then. But come home, and my mother always thought there should be laundry going at all times. So we would only sleep for Friday night and Saturday night on these sheets and use the towels, and she would have to lug them all back home, launder them, so we would be taking fresh sheets to the, it was ridiculous the amount of work she went through, unnecessarily, but that was her thing. I loved school. I loved grade school. Back in the day when you were afraid of the principal and kids got hacks for misbehaving, and you had to eat everything on your plate. Your metal tray, you had to eat everything on it because there were starving children somewhere. And I always, to this day, have hated beans. And so whenever there was green beans, I would put them in my pint milk carton And so the teachers got wind of that, and so and you had to have your tray checked, and if everything wasn't eaten, you had to go back and sit down and finish what's on your tray. And so I'd go up there proudly like, well, I ate everything, and then they started shaking the milk carton. And so then I had to eat milky green beans with no milk to wash them down. I remember when President Kennedy was killed, and we were in the lunchroom, and my teacher, Mrs. Brender, came in, and she's just sobbing, and and you never saw your teacher cry, and she said, someone's killed the president. And I said to my best friend, Debbie Kuhlman, I didn't know Mrs. Brender knew the president. Because I thought, why would she be crying unless she knew him? So, oh my gosh, our teacher knew the president. That was a bigger deal than the fact that he was dead, I guess.
After finishing East Wenatchee Elementary, Portia moved on to junior high.
Junior high, Vivian M. Sterling Junior High.
In the next few minutes, we're going to turn a lens on this institution called junior high to see which steps can help you get off to a good start.
I could never be a cheerleader. I was too much of a clod. I could never be in drill team because I have no rhythm. Well, I did get a school spirit award in junior high for going to the most basketball games. Yeah, I was never competitive. I was never competitive, and I was never athletic at all.
Among people who like the same things you like, you can make new friends.
7th grade is where I met Connie. And
there was a trail between our two cabins. And we had it munched down pretty well. You got right to Portia's cabin, and Cliff always had his cement mixer up there. He had a project always, and always involved the cement mixer.
She always loved our dad, and coming down and seeing what Mr. Pace was building with the cement mixer, what he had going.
Cliff always had his cement mixer up there. He had a project always, and always involved the cement mixer. And the cement mixer would be going. I told her, I said, we should have buried him with the cement mixer or put him in there with it, geez. Yeah, so Cliff always had a project, and it was, working around the cabin. It was the best. And then we were talking, and we were just building our cabin at Chelan, and God, we had to go up there for the weekend, and it was either early spring or fall, and nobody's up there. It's dead as a doornail. And she was like, we're going up to the lake too. And I was like, well, where's your cabin? Well, by then, we were just 4 cabins apart. We're like, what? We were, playing or doing something. And my dad, who was friends with Bob Barron's, Barb's brother. Portia was leaving, and my dad was like, who are you? Oh, are Barb and Cliff your parents? And he was like, oh, and so he was asking her something about Becky. And I was like, oh my God, I just met this girl. How does my dad know who she is and her parents? Horrified. He knows the parents too. Oh God.
Wenatchee in the 60s and 70s was wonderful. Home life was good. My grandmother died in 1967, I think, and so Grandpa he had dinner with us almost every night, and Friday nights was Dad would broil steaks and make homemade French fries, always. Sunday was always fried chicken, biscuits, and gravy. Oh, apple pie, yeah. My aunt and uncle lived just right in front of us, basically. Grandpa had a trailer between us. No cell phones or not much TV, and just a good, just real close family. Went to a few dances and had a few boyfriends. The first love of my life was Jim Wright, who my mom referred to as Mr. Wright. He was a cool dude. He he started going to our schools in junior high, and we just thought, oh my gosh, look at this guy. We're in 8th or 9th grade, because it was 7th, 8th, and 9th for junior high, and he could shave. He's got whiskers. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh. I want to be his girlfriend. Junior high was good, and then high school, I just thought, don't make me go, don't make me go. All those kids are so much older, don't make me go. I'm not gonna be able to survive this. So I go, and Pam, my sister, Pam, she was walking down the hall with me, telling me it's gonna be okay, and I threw up in the trash can. I was so nervous that I don't know what I thought was gonna happen, but all these big kids, and how am I gonna survive this? Well, I think once I kind of threw up all my fears, then everything kind of fell into place.
No, first I had Wenatchee boyfriends. We were always in awe because the East Wenatchee boys we were really sick of. And I don't know how you got all those Wenatchee boyfriends.
In high school, I was senior prom queen.
Is that the one where you were with Jim Wright and you were wearing that velvet dress and he had had his hand on your thigh? It had made that mark, and on all your prom pictures, that handprint on your thigh was in that?
So yeah, after high school, then I went to Kinman Business College in Spokane. And they were in the throes of building all these apartments and all this stuff, getting ready for the 1974 World's Fair. And so the top 4 floors were for the girls that were going to go to Kinman Business University. And Kinman Business University was my dream school because it was in the top floor of Macy's department store. So you had to go through Macy's every day to and from school. So what could be better? So they put all of us in apartments with girls from different states. So I had a gal from Montana, a girl from Alaska, and a girl from Idaho. And so that was just a 9-month business course, and that was fun. And we didn't have a car. We walked back and forth, and we had to wear dresses, and it was cold. We asked the little grocery store that wasn't too far from our apartment, if we give you $5, can we take this shopping cart back and forth? And we just left it on our balcony, and he let us. And then after school was done, we took it back, rented it for 9 months for $5. I got very close to one of my teachers, which I think would be frowned on today. He started out as my speech teacher, and I didn't want to take speech, but you had to have an elective, so I took speech. And once I was in his class, then after that quarter or whatever I was in speech, he asked me to be his teaching assistant. And I thought, okay, Mr. Rasper. I just thought he was the scariest, meanest teacher ever, but then he was nice and friendly, and we started having these bets on the football games, the high school football games, and if I guessed right who was going to win, I don't know how I had money, but somehow we always ended up going out to dinner together, which is so weird. And we always went to Roy's Chuck Wagon. And it was probably only 2 or 3 times, but it didn't seem weird at all. Of course, now it would be, he was nothing but a gentleman. And when he quit teaching at our high school, he moved to Casper, Wyoming. And I had gone on to business college, and he wrote to me and said he wanted me to visit him in Casper, Wyoming. And I saw nothing wrong with that. And he said he would send me a bus ticket. And so then the next letter I got from him was, my wife doesn't think this is such a good idea. And I'm like, well, okay. I was just painfully innocent, and I don't know why she wouldn't want me to come visit. I don't even know her. Mom and Dad were going to be getting transferred to Keokuk, Iowa, because they were closing where my dad worked here. Pam and I stayed in Wenatchee for a little while, and we both worked at, it was a place called Made of Clover. And it was the strangest place. It was like a dairy store, but they sold the milk in pouches. And when you bought your milk, you got a pitcher, and then you just snipped the corner of the pouch. And I don't know why that ever got to be a thing, but waste-wise, I guess it was a good idea. And so we did that, and we lived in this little house in a cherry orchard once Mom and Dad moved. And then we decided we're going to Florida. We are going to Florida. We had a 1963 Pontiac that my dad bought from his secretary. And, oh yeah, this car will make it. And it was probably 1973, 4. We were headed to Florida because I had a boyfriend that I'd written to over the years. I met him in Bakersfield when I was 16, and we had kept in touch. And then he moved to Florida, and I said, well, I think Pam and I will come visit. Wenatchee to Florida. And I don't know how much money we had, but we worked at Made of Clover, so we were probably quite wealthy. And so we headed out, and we got stuck in Oregon because there was a gas shortage. And we spent so much time in a motel, spending money, every day at a motel and eating out, that our money just kept getting, less and less and less. And so we finally made it to Bakersfield, where we had an aunt and uncle and cousins. And we thought, well, we'll just stay here, go to work, and then when we get enough money, we'll continue on. To this day, I've not been to Florida. So I always thought it sounded like a country song. We headed to Florida, but we ran out of money in Bakersfield.
In the summer, she started babysitting her cousin's son in California. And she would be gone all summer. And then she would come back. And then as soon as they graduated, she and Pam both went down to California. God knows what happened down there, but.
The JLJ apartments, they were just one step up from Section 8. And they were in East Bakersfield. They had fiberglass walls. If you wanted to hang a picture, you have to tape it. And they were terrible, and you could hear everything, and it was just terrible, terrible. The worst of the worst lived there. And so we had to get a job, and so Pam went to work at a Chinese restaurant as a hostess, and so she worked nights, and I went to work for the Chamber of Commerce. And she said, well, you have to, and it was my car, but she says, you have to take the bus because I'm gonna go to work before you get home, and I need the car for running around during the day. And I'm like, well, so the bus would get me downtown at like Chester and 19th by 9 o'clock. Well, I was supposed to be at my desk at 9 o'clock, so I was always late.
Working 9 to 5, what a way to make a living, barely getting by.
I basically was working for the Convention Bureau. So I was the reservation person for the Convention Bureau for everybody that came to Bakersfield. And back in the day, it was everybody wanted to stay at the Bakersfield Inn. Everybody wanted to stay on Union. That was where all the best hotels were. Then I went to work for Eurosics for the Carrot Shed. And I worked there for about 5 years. And then I went to work for Granite Construction. And I did that for about 5 years. I guess that's my cutoff. I got pregnant when I worked at Granite Construction. When I was like 9 months pregnant, I decided that, I needed to stop working. And so I quit working, had Dustin, My happiest accomplishment would be Dustin Tyler.
You are the sunshine of my life. That's why I'll always be around.
You are the apple of my eye. Forever you'll stay in my heart.
I feel like this is the beginning. Though I've loved you for a million years. And if I thought our love
It took me 7 years to get pregnant, so I was, and I had some problems when he was born, and so I came through all that, and Russ comes in to tell me, I said, does he have everything he's supposed to have? And he goes, yeah, and something extra. And my mind just instantly went to a tail. And I'm like, oh, or a horn, or what now? And he said, well, he's got an extra thumb. And I'm like, where? It's like, well, it's right next to his other thumb, but it just all kind of melds together. I had so many nurses come in. We had, in Bakersfield at the time, we had a lot of Indian nurses. And in India, an extra digit is considered royalty. And they're like, you know, and I'm like, you know, it's not special here, it's weird. And so we're probably gonna have it cut off. What? It was like, well, I can send it to you if you'd like, because you know, that's not a thing. And I said, you know, he'll probably wanna play baseball and it's gotta fit in a glove. And yeah, they thought that was pretty awful of me. But then Russell got the bright idea that we should move to Dallas. And so we packed up baby Dustin, and oh man, we have a Datsun or something, and going across the Mojave Desert with a baby, he was like 5 weeks old, and a dog, and the air conditioner would work for 30 minutes and then stop. And so you'd just be dying, and then, can we turn it back on? Oh, it's on, okay, then 30 minutes, and it would just freeze up. Oh my goodness, that was the longest trip. And you know, I can remember seeing the sign, don't mess with Texas, and I'm like, we're in Texas! And it's gonna take us about 3 days to get to Dallas because Texas is so huge.
It's dance time in Texas, and
We had our life in Texas for about 5 years. That is so funny when I think about it. Everything's about 5 years.
We'll do that Texas two-step and that old Cotton Eye Joe. I'll take you honky-tonkin' in my old pickup truck. It's dance time in Texas and the music lifts you up. It's dance time in Texas and we're striking up the band. We'll go honky-tonkin', honey, take my hand. It's dance time in Texas where the wine and music flow. We'll do that Texas two-step and that old Cotton Eye Joe. Now it's time for the slow dance, and we're waltzing oh so close.
And so I just said to Russell one day, what would you think about moving back? And he goes, I was just thinking. We were watching, I think, like a surfing competition or something on TV. My cousin, the judge, Susan, we were still living in Texas. And right about the time Russell and I had the conversation about moving back, she called me and she said, I'm pregnant. And I cannot imagine going back to work if you're not watching the baby. And I said, this is just the push we needed. And I said, I'm coming back. We left when Dustin was 5 and went back to Bakersfield. Believe it or not, you can live someplace where Bakersfield seems like a good idea. And that was Texas, because it's so darn flat. And you just think, give me a mountain, show me a beach, anything. Yeah, moved back to Bakersfield, and I think we stayed more than 5 years. And so, yeah, I had about 9 kids at one point, and Dustin would come home from school and just take over. And then Allison Grunsky from down the street, she started coming by. As soon as she'd get her homework done, she'd run down and she'd say, Portia, I want to do everything just like you when I grow up. And I said, maybe set your sights a little higher. Dustin would load up all those little boys and put them in his radio flyer wagon and pull them all over the deck. And maybe it was like 6th grade when he started telling me, can somebody else be the mom that goes? Yes, he did. And, well, I was heartbroken. I was devastated, but I understood. And I can remember when he went to Camp Keep, he was all excited because he went to the Camp Keep that was at the beach. He learned about so much, and he came home and he was so mad. He gets off the bus and he goes, that was stupid. And I'm like, really? Well, he would never admit it, but he was homesick. And that was a long time to be gone. And so once he got over being mad, he enjoyed going to the beach more afterwards because you'd turn over something and you knew what you were looking at. And when he got his driver's license, I thought, you know, I think I'm going to go to work. The kids all went off to school, and so I answered an ad in the paper to deliver newspapers, and I think it paid about 12 cents an hour. They make it sound like it's going to be good. Well, they gave us, it was me and another gal, and they gave us like the alphabetic streets in that part of town, like O through S or something. And I'm like, whoa, I guess it's okay during the daytime. And so it made nothing, but you know, it was good exercise and met some nice people. And so then I'm looking in the paper for a different job, and I see this receptionist job at Sunridge Nursery. And so I go out and interview, and what kind of employment do you have currently? I'm delivering, no, it was phone books. It wasn't newspapers, it was phone books. That was even harder. They're heavy, especially in Bakersfield. So I said, well, you know, this job looks pretty good to me. And it was a beautiful office. Oh, I thought I would love to work here. And so I wait a few days and I get a call and they went with somebody else. Terribly disappointed, don't want to deliver phone books. And I thought, well, I can look for something else. And then a couple days go by and they called me back and they said, she was awful, can you start tomorrow? And I'm like, oh, cool. And I just asked the boss, I said, why did you choose her over me to begin with? And they said, we couldn't decide, we flipped a coin. And I'm like, oh, okay, lost on a coin toss. So yeah, I worked there for 5 years. I wanted to move back to Wenatchee. I just had kind of had it, and so Dustin was working at Costco at the time, and I just went in there and he said, you're not coming back this time, are you? And I said, no. And he said, I don't want you to live there without me. And he was leaving for college. So I said, you know, good timing. So then he and I needed to find him a place in San Francisco to live. And oh my goodness, what an experience. We went up there and we looked at this one. And you know how in your mind you're always kind of like, well, I guess this would work because I don't have to have a true bedroom, I guess. Like this one, I can remember it had red carpeting down the hall, and you had a bedroom is all you had. The kitchen was down the hall, and it was awful. It was just awful. I told Dustin, I said, I don't think I could sleep nights thinking of you here. I just don't think I could. So we go to the next one, and it's a bunch of men that live there, and we walk in, and it's an okay place, but I said, and it was just full of people's stuff in their areas, and I said, where would Dustin's bed go? And he said, yeah, he could just have it right along this wall when people walk in, and I'm like, oh, this is not gonna work. And so we go to this one, and I said, oh, there's an elevator. It's upstairs. And we go up in the elevator, and I said, oh, there's a welcome mat and a wreath on the door. It's not just men that live here. And so this jaunty little gay Filipino young man in his pajamas answers the door, hello, and they know we're coming, and so we go in, and Christine is there, and it was very cute, very clean, and we sat down, and I just started gushing about, oh my gosh, I would just love for him to live here, and I would feel so comfortable knowing that he's with you nice people, and blah, 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 and I think I let Dustin say a couple things. That's all we had to look at, and so we're driving home like, oh, please call, please call, please call. And so we get, I don't know, a ways down the road, and they called. Christine says, Dustin, not only do we want you to be our roommate, but your mom can move in too. Oh, I was just, I can sleep at night. I rented a pickup and moved him up there, and I can remember this so well. He said, Mom, don't start crying or I will. So of course we both do. And I swear to God, I'm driving down the highway, and that Kenny Chesney song comes on, There Goes My Life. Oh my gosh. Off, off, off. But yeah, and then I came home and just started, I called my friend Kathy and said, I've left and I want to move in with you. And she said, my nephews are here for the weekend. Can you give me till Monday? And so I said, sure. So I stayed with Pam. Then I moved in with Kathy. And we just had the best time. I moved a bunch of my stuff into her garage, and I wasn't going to take everything, but I filed for divorce, and the attorney said, you don't have to hang around for this. I can do it all. So I said, okay, I just soon not have to go. It's funny, the things you think are important. I had a car that my brother sold me that my mom and dad gave me the money for. And I took all my Christmas decorations, my vacuum cleaner, and Phoebe. And I'm like, I felt like the jerk. All I need is this dog and this vacuum cleaner.
The ashtray, and these matches, and the remote control, and the paddle ball. This lamp. The ashtray, this paddle game, and the remote control, and the lamp, and that's all I need. And that's all I need, too. I don't need one other thing. Not one. I need this.
Mom and Dad had bought a little house for me to rent, and then Jim and I met on eHarmony. I wasn't going to bars or anything like that. I was hanging out with my mom and dad, and I wasn't going to meet anybody, and I wanted to meet somebody. And so I went on eHarmony, and it took me 3 days just to answer the questionnaire because they ask you such thought-provoking questions. It's not like you go on a site and I like his face. So the computer says whether you look compatible or not. So it hooked me up with this guy, was he in Moses Lake or something, and he just wanted to talk on the phone. we talked like 3 different times, and I said, so do you want to meet? Not really. And I'm like, well, okay, nice talking to you. And then there was a guy that he was a musician, and he played in the orchestra at Apple Blossom. We have an Apple Blossom play, and there's an orchestra, and he said, well, if you want to meet, I'll be in the pit, you know. And I said, well, yeah, my mom and I are going to go to the play, so yeah, just lean over the railing at the break. So I did, and instantly, just nothing, you know, nice meeting you, and yeah, have a nice life. And Jim was doing the same thing. I think he tried a couple of different ones. They ask you, how far are you willing to go for a date? And he said, like, I think he said Oregon, or, you know, like he met this woman in Bend. He drove all the way to Bend for a date. And so they go to this restaurant and they order lunch, and the waitress comes by and she said, you know, we're kind of known for our pies. Would you like pie? Jim loves pie, and he said, yeah, I'll have, you know, whatever. And she said, no, I don't care for any pie. And so then when the lady comes back with Jim's pie, she gets her fork and she starts eating his pie. And he said, you said you didn't want pie. And he said, well, needless to say, I never saw her again. I'm like, over pie? Just because you didn't want to share? After his wife passed away, he had a couple gals that came to his house and were a little too, he said, well, the one touched my leg and I had shorts on. I didn't like that. I'm like, so we're both on eHarmony, and it puts us together. I liked how he looked, and it said he had retired from the PUD, which a good place to retire. And I was being a nanny at the time, and the guy who it was his children I was watching, he worked the PUD. And so I went to work one day and I said, hey Tracy, have you ever heard of Jim Steele? And he said, no. And I said, well, I'm looking at him on eHarmony, and he says that he retired from the PUD. And he said, I'll check him out. So he goes to work, and the next day he said, everybody says he's a hell of a guy. And I said, really? He said, should I keep checking? And I said, well, I think we're good. Nobody said anything bad about him. We're on the computer, and I just said, if you're interested, call me. Ring. I mean, it was just like, he had his finger on the button. And I was sitting out on the porch at the little rental house, or he said, what's that music I hear? And I said, oh, the band is practicing for Apple Blossom. And he said, well, I can hear them from my house. Where are you? And I'm like, I'm not falling for that. I'm not telling you where I live. But we knew that, you know, we had to be really close. We could hear the music from both our houses. So anyway, we decided to meet down at the park by the river at 9 o'clock in the morning that Friday the 13th. And so he was driving his hot new Mustang, and so I could tell as he's walking towards me, I'm thinking, he had mentioned that he had MS, and I said, well, I've got arthritis, so that should be fine. I could tell he wasn't as limber as I was, but we sat there and we probably talked for like 3 hours. He said, do you want to go get a coffee? And I said, well, I don't drink coffee. And he said, well, do you want to go to Starbucks? And I said, I'd never been to Starbucks. And he said, well, go to Starbucks with me and I'll order you something I know you'll like. And I said, okay. So he ordered me a strawberry frappuccino, and it was love at first drink. And so we sat there for probably another 2 hours. By the time I came back to check in with Mom, she thought I'd been kidnapped. And when we first met, I said, I'm gonna bring my dog when we first met. And he said, oh good, I'll bring mine too. And I said, what's your dog's name? Phoebe. Oh, And we both named him Phoebe because Phoebe on Friends. So I get to the park with my Phoebe and no Phoebe. And I said, so you don't have a dog? No, I have a dog, but I just couldn't round her up. And I'm like, yeah, right. And so then when I go to his house the first time, I said, where's your dog? And he said, oh, she just ran off. A neighbor will bring her back eventually. And so I was there for like an hour and I thought, there's no dog. And yeah, a neighbor brought her back. And man, she didn't like me at first. She's chasing me around the coffee table. Jack Russell Terror. So anyway, we have these dogs with the same name, so we had to call them Phoebe Steele and Phoebe Cantrell. And the first dogs with last names. Our first date was, there was a paddle boat that was on the Columbia River. It was these people's beautiful big house. And one of the Italian restaurants catered it. And so they only take like, I think like 6 couples. And it was a beautiful night. It was maybe like 78 degrees, perfectly calm river. And it was so nice. And we ate, out on the deck. We sat with another nice couple and we had a really, really nice time. But the whole time I'm sitting there, I have gas. So bad, my stomach is killing me and I'm trying to eat and I'm just dying. And I go in the bathroom, there is a bathroom, and no relief there. And so we finally get off the boat and get in his car. And I said, I am sorry, I know this is our first date, but I said, could you please take me to a drugstore? I said, I've got the worst gas. And he's like, I'm on it. And yeah, still got a second date. He right away started talking about me moving in with him. And I just thought, I don't know, I like my little house. And so anyway, we just spend all of our time together, and he leads me to believe that he likes everything I like. Oh, he likes Mexican food, and he likes wine, and he likes to shop, and it was all a lie. Found out later, he lied about everything. He just wanted to get in my good graces. We started talking about moving in together, and I was worried, what would Dustin think? What would Dustin think? I don't know. So Dustin was up here for Christmas, and he had met Jim and liked him, and I had probably a couple of drinks, build up my courage, and I said, well, Jim and I are thinking about moving in together, and Dustin says, that sounds like a good way to save money. And I thought, oh, and I fretted and fretted and fretted. Yeah, it was January, and I wanted to sell a bunch of stuff because he had a house full of stuff. And so I had an indoor garage sale and sold everything I wanted to sell. So then I moved in with him, and I just sat there like, I'm gonna have to change a few things here. Walls are gonna need to come down, and yeah, so I immediately started changing things because it just was not my taste at all. But the rental house was too small. And then it was Christmas morning, and Dustin and Aunt Claire were there, and we're just in the bathroom getting ready to come out and open presents. And Jim says, I think you need to take me to the hospital. And I said, why? Well, I haven't been able to get a good breath for 3 days. I said, 3 days, and you wait till my birthday? Fine. So we go to the hospital in the emergency room, and he just looks over at me and he said, I told you should have married me. And right then it was just like, why? It just makes life easier to be married because, medical things and signing things and all that, thinking of it practically. So we just decided to get married, and it was all very hurry up. We were just gonna get married at the courthouse, but we had the date 1-2-1-3 in mind, and the courthouse, there was nobody around. There wasn't a judge to marry us, and so this guy who I thought was the janitor, he says, we're getting our license, and he says, well, I could marry you. And I'm like, the janitor? And I didn't say that, but he's also a bailiff. and he can marry you. So his name was Juan. And so we got married in the Chelan room at the Holiday Inn. We had about 10 people. We got married, and I kept calling him Pastor Juan. And he goes, why are you calling me Pastor Juan? And I said, well, I figure if you can marry somebody, don't you have to be a pastor? And he's like, well, or a bailiff, or a judge, or if you've just got the... I said, okay, Juan. And so then we all went to Red Robin, had a burger, and Pastor Juan and his family were there. And we got our rings at the pawn shop. I said to the guy at the pawn shop when Jim was buying this for me, I said, wouldn't it be nice if everybody that comes in to pawn, like obviously wedding rings, that they don't tell you the story behind it? And he goes, no. And I said, why not? And he said, because it would be a lie, because probably most people stole it from Grandma. And I'm like, well, that's a terrible thing. That was done, and yeah, we were married. Yeah, and yeah, we just hit it off, and I guess the rest is history. Dustin calls me, and well, he had been. We had talked or emailed or something, and I was adamantly opposed to him going on this longboat down this random river. I didn't want him to be, it was just all too much for me. I didn't even know what to worry about. And I said, who are these people on this boat? Well, they're just other backpackers. And I said, could I please have somebody's name and home address? So I have some parents to call to say, have you seen your children? No, he wouldn't give me anything. And I said, okay, fine. And I said, but who are they? What if you don't get along? And he said, I get along with all of them, but there is this annoying French girl. And I said, oh, well, okay. So he's going, off the, I didn't have any correspondence with him for at least 2 weeks. And then he calls or something. And I said, well, what about that annoying French girl? And he said, I love her. And I said, what? Yep, I love her. And then he sends me this email about how much he loves her, and oh, she's the most wonderful thing. And so then the next thing I know, they're in Bakersfield, and he said, you have to come to Bakersfield right now and meet her, because she can't stay in this country very long. And I'm like, oh, Jim, I just hopped in the car and headed south. And I said, what's gonna happen? We're gonna get down there, and he's gonna already have proposed to somebody I've never met. And it's at your house, right? At you and Amanda's house. And so, he just keeps calling me saying, where are you now? Where are you now? He was so excited. And so we get there, and, he brings Aunt Claire to the door and holds out her hand. And I said, I know, you're engaged, right? And he goes, nope, we're married. And I'm like, holy crap. Okay, I did not see that coming. But then he said, her family couldn't be there, so it wouldn't be fair. And I said, your grandmother will be thrilled, because she hates to go to weddings, so, and she's sure not going to Vegas. But yeah, so then we learn all about Aunt Claire, and then they moved to New York. And when I really got to be grandma, Aiden was 1. And so I missed all the babyhood, really. And but it was nobody's fault, it was just when it was. There's a lot of COVID babies out there. We were on our way to California, made another wrong turn like I always did, and we were supposed to be there. I took a wrong turn, and I called Dustin and I said, the road I was on just ended. It just ended. There's no road. And he goes, do you see the ocean? I said, no. He said, okay, then you haven't gone too far in the wrong direction. But we had to go all the way back to I-5, go down I-5, and early days of navigation, you just did what it told you. And it messed me up so many times. But anyway, we got there, and Dustin wanted to make a video, and so Aiden was being, he was walking, but, you know, kind of tipsy. And so he was around the corner in the backyard, and so we came around the corner, and Dustin's filming, and you know, Aiden has seen so few people in his whole life, and nobody had ever been in their backyard. And so he's just like, but, you know, he let me pick him up and let Jim pick him up, and yeah, it just melted into him. Just nothing like it. He has no problem with me being bald. He has no problem with me having long blonde hair. I thought he would, you know, mention it. I think he's more comfortable with me being bald. Yeah, he's, you know, I wanted to be called Grammy, and because that's what I called my grandmothers. Number one, I was his favorite grandmother. There's, that French grandmother, but I believe I was your favorite grandmother. I don't need a title, but it's just like when Dustin was a baby, my mom and dad were around a lot, and I called my mom Mom, and everybody else called me Portia, and so he called me Portia, and he called my mom Mom. And so I told him one day, I feel like I'm your stepmother. And so Aiden, because Dustin calls me Portia half the time, so Aiden and Claire always says, you know, Grammy Portia, but he'll say, "Where's Porsche?" It's just what he calls me, you know. And
sounds like this. And you're a hell of a mom.
And there hasn't been any awards given for that yet, but I'm waiting for my gold medallion. I guess I've always just been very proud of my family and my circle of friends. Yeah, I had no idea how loved I am just from the people reaching out and coming around. And yeah, it's like, Connie and I always kid, you know, I was in Leavenworth one day, and there was a UPS driver talking to the girl at this shop. And they were saying, Eastmont class of this. And he was saying, Eastmont class of this. And I said, Eastmont class of 72. And they both looked at me like I was an alien. And I'm like, Portia Pace, Connie Tedford, Rachel Casey, you don't remember any of us? And they're like, no. And I said, we were popular. And Connie's like, you didn't say that. Yes, I did. We should be remembered.
There was joy, there was hurt, remember when. Remember when old ones died and new were born, and life was changed, disassembled, rearranged. We came together, fell apart.
Well, yeah, I have just enjoyed everybody, and everybody means so much to me. And it just seems like anytime I've needed somebody, they've been there. And I hope I've done the same. And just thank you for loving me and being my family and my friends.
So I know we never. No, I never had a first dance with you. So I thought we'd do that right now. If my phone unlocks.
I hope you never lose your sense of wonder. You get your fill to eat, but always keep that hunger. May you Promise me that you'll give faith a fighting chance. And when you get the choice to sit it out or dance, I hope you dance. I hope you dance. I hope you never fear those mountains in the distance. Never settle for the path of least resistance.
Man, you really can't dance.
Living might mean taking
I'm waiting for
chances.
somebody to tap me on the shoulder and say, get off the floor.
Is Graham there? She run away.
Might be a mistake,
Graham, come
but
here.
it's worth making. Don't let some helping heart leave you bitter. When you come close to selling out, reconsider. Give the heavens above more than just a passing glance. And when you get the choice to sit it out or dance, I hope you dance. I hope you dance.
You're a good boy, Dustin. You were always my favorite. Okay.
Okay, I can't do more. You okay?
Except for that mean boy. Dustin told me I was a bad dancer.
Give one big hug toward me. Like look toward me and hug each other. There we go. You are all so beautiful.
When you get the choice to sit it out